Deep in a German forest, just behind the old Iron Curtain, lies the former front line of the Cold War. During the half-century of fighting which separated countries and families in a war born out of philosophy and politics, this was the tip of the communist spear. An air base armed with the latest in Soviet military aircraft technology. But after the fall of the Berlin Wall, the pilots in East and West Germany, once separated by ideology, are now unified with a common heritage and a single goal: peace. Before, American pilots would have trained for combat against some of these men. Now they meet in Germany for a remarkable mission, unimaginable barely a decade ago. Americans tour the city. At the Brandenburg Gate, they stand where the Berlin Wall once divided East and West with concrete, barbed wire, and the guns of the Cold War. The wall may be gone now, but not the threat to freedom and peace. No one knows that better than these men. More than tourists, they are United States Navy F/A-18 Hornet pilots. Their squadrons have traveled from Naval Air Station Oceana in Virginia Beach across the Atlantic to Germany. They're here behind the former enemy's lines for Red October, a training exercise against the aircraft that were once poised to do battle against them in the skies of Europe.
Opportunity and an adventure.
Commander Greg Nosal describes Red October.
To work with the reserves, to work with the United States Air Force, to work with NATO forces, by fighting a foreign country, by fighting MiG-29s. The whole concept of taking a squadron halfway around the world is phenomenal. And the young guys, they're kind of scared. You know, and that's good, and they should be. And even some of the older guys are scared because they just don't know. And again, that's what makes that unique, because the idea that we all leave 2 weeks from now, when we're starting to head home, we can go, been there, done that. I know what they're good at, I know what I'm good at. And then therefore, if I ever have to see this guy again across the circle when he's carrying live missiles, I know what I need to do. I personally get to talk to 3- and 4-star admirals and generals about this detachment. Again, so there's a lot of focus on this. This is huge. This is going to be blast. It's different. This is an adventure. When you talk about join the Navy, see the world. You know, the Navy is not a job, it's an adventure. This is what that is. All right? So please, everybody in this room, do your part to make this detachment a success. And I guarantee you, a year, 5, 10 years from now, we'll all be talking about this and saying what a great time we had in Lager, Germany, fighting MiG-29 Fulcrums.
During the Second World War, the United States and Soviet Union worked together to defeat the Nazis. Immediately after, the partnership fractured. Europe became a chessboard for the new superpowers, each creating their respective sphere of influence. Despite the creation of the United Nations, East-West tensions led to the Soviet blockade of Berlin in 1948. The West responded with the year-long Berlin airlift. This back and forth would continue throughout the Cold War. For the Americans, containment of communism led directly to war in Korea and then in Vietnam. The Soviets sent tanks into Prague and then missiles into Cuba. The superpowers' competitiveness in the arms race and the space race was the expression of the threat felt by each side.
The Soviets had told everyone that the U.S. was poised for a first strike against them. We were the major threat, and they were either convinced or were certainly telling their people that we were a threat that could materialize at a moment's notice. We, on the other hand, were in what we considered more of a defensive posture, monitoring what they were doing, ensuring that we had the capability of deterring the actions on their part. And people who were forward deployed around the world, I speak now about Navy units, our carriers would, if they were in a high threat area, have aircraft on alert and ready to launch.
In the early morning of August 13th, 1961, the East Germans began the construction of the Berlin Wall. Built to stop the flood of East Germans leaving for the West, it divided not only a city, but also a people, and it became a 28-mile-long metaphor for the divisions of East and West. 191 East Berliners would die trying to cross to freedom, but in the Cold War, that freedom was uncertain.
The countries of Western Europe clearly felt threatened. It's a feeling unlike anything we have here. We're sitting behind our oceans, which separate us by great distances from any prospective enemy. In Western Europe, these were countries who'd seen war century after century, who knew that the threat was just a few hours away. I have been in the eastern part of then West Germany and was told that it was 12 minutes from the nearest Soviet tank base in East Germany. If you're living under those circumstances, you have a totally different mindset about the threat than you do when you're living in the United States.
Nowhere was that more true than in West Berlin.
They didn't know what to think. They really didn't. They didn't know whether the next day the Russians would be pouring through the Fulda Gap and wiping out Americans and Germans alike, or just what to expect. Because clearly this was a new major escalation of the Cold War in their view, and it was.
Military buildups intensified. The need for a technological advantage in the air was a prime concern for both sides. Born of this one-upsmanship were the American F-18 and the Soviet MiG-29. Now these old foes meet in Germany for the remarkable training exercise called Red October. Navy instructor pilot Lieutenant Dave Koss, call sign Mongo. When not flying, he indulges in his other childhood passion, fishing.
Going to Germany is just going to be a phenomenal experience for all of us. The MiG-29 that we're going to face over there is the most exported threat, Category 4 aircraft that we could see. Going over there and getting to see a MiG-29 that I've been studying for the last 4 or 5 years and actually get to go up and train and fly against it is going to be just an invaluable experience. There's a little bit of anticipation and fear of what is going to happen out there.
Hello, Satan.
We're not just fighting the aircraft, we're fighting the man in the aircraft. So it's going to be a phenomenal training opportunity to face something that I've never seen before, to face a man that has been trained differently than I have, and to go out there and see how he performs and how I perform against him.
Out the window. So, you know,
My job at the Replacement Air Group is a little bit different. I typically train the guys that are coming through for refresher training. So I am more of a tactics instructor and teaching them how we do business when we do go out to sea, as opposed to teaching the new guys how to fly the airplane.
Mongo is carrying on a tradition. He's the son of a Vietnam-era fighter pilot.
Seeing my father do it as a kid, I didn't really realize the dangers that were in it. I saw my fair share of what was going on in the aviation community and didn't really realize the full extent of how dangerous it was. And it is dangerous, and I've lost quite a few of my friends. I can count at least 13 who I've lost to the business. So you have to realize there's an element of danger in it. Just about 2 years ago, maybe it was turning 30, and I finally realized that I wasn't invincible. Seeing it happen so much, it really starts to hit home.
Also on board for Red October, Lieutenant Commander Jeff Cherico, call sign Caesar, an instructor pilot under training.
Ready to go?
Caesar met his wife while both were students at the Naval Academy. Diana Cherico is out of the Navy now, a retired meteorologist. They have 4 children. The newest member of the family is just 8 weeks old.
I just want to be a good instructor and to make it worthwhile so that a student looks at the schedule, he sees Caesar's on it, and he goes, oh, great. You know, either this guy's a jerk or this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. I'd like him to say, hey, it's Caesar. I'm going to learn something today.
So now we're going to be...
We had somebody following you down when you came in and joined on us. I think he took a shot, but I got the lead guy. I didn't find the skipper until he was underneath me, so I don't know what we had.
More than likely, we go out there, we're going to see a MiG-29 somewhere. They proliferated all throughout the world. The bad guys that we fly over or against or who are a threat to us have it. And we've learned some good things in our professional journals, our secret manuals. We talk all about how we're going to fight the MiG, what we're going to do against the MiG-29. And what this taught me was, yeah, the first time I saw him, I was scared. But then you fight him and you realize it's as much or more the pilot than it is the actual airplane.
You want to give me a kiss and a hug? Oh, love you.
For Lieutenant Rich Brophy, call sign Snap, it's time for goodbyes.
You want to see my airplane? Sure, we can go look at my airplane.
For the next 2 weeks, families and loved ones will be a world away. Everything the squadrons will need is loaded for them.
Let me get some people on this side and some people on this side.
The aircraft are checked and double-checked, ensuring that they will be as prepared as possible. Because it's almost time for Red October to begin. A few minutes from the former east-west border is the Laga Air Force Base. Soviet-built MiG-29s stand alongside Western-built F-4 Phantoms. A squadron of the former East German Air Force was combined with a squadron from the West. They are now the 73rd Fighter Wing of the German Luftwaffe. With MiGs in the squadron, the 73rd Wing is a hot destination for air combat training among NATO allies, and the pilots of Oceana are next in line. Andreas Zuba, called Zubo, of the original 40 East German MiG pilots who joined the Luftwaffe after reunification, he is one of only 4 that remain. The rest retired or washed out. Some because their pilot skills were not up to Western standards. Others because they could not adjust to the new military culture. For Zubo, the decision to stay was easy. He loves flying.
I think I started flying because it was the fascination to move in 3 dimensions. Because of my parents, I was connected to the flying as well, because my dad was working for the civilian air company. The best part of flying actually is that you have every day to adapt to different situations. So basically, there's always something new to learn if you are going to fly different missions, and it changes very much from day to day, from week to week. The MiG is not the most sophisticated system, so what we learn is just how to defend versus the good weapons in the NATO stock, and how to perform the MiG to the max extent. I started in 1981 with the East German Air Force. The original mission was basically scramble the aircraft from the ground, get as fast as you can to any target, and then try to employ your weapons, and that under close control of GCI. And basically all the decisions concerning this situational awareness, that decisions were made on the ground from the GCI controller or some higher ranking guys there. The changeover was quite difficult because everything changed from one day to another. We had to train new language like English, then started with switching over flying procedures. We changed tactics as well, so we all had to adapt to that. It was not so easy in the beginning, but since that point, when you realize that you have to throw overboard all this old stuff and learn the new things, then you progressed even better then.
Shark 1, your merchant is push shipping 15,000 at 21,000.
And MiG-1, clear on 2 Phantoms right over head on us. Mind you, both Phantoms on top of MiG-1 and 2 are dead.
Copy, kill, installate.
Forward move.
Shark 3 or 4, one of you is dead.
Zubo's not the only pilot of the 73rd Wing who will be flying a MiG against the Americans in Red October. Matthias Lump, called Lumpy, is a former West German pilot. Not too many years ago, the MiG-29 was the most feared weapon of his sworn enemy. Today, it's his to fly.
Flying MiG-29, it's probably one of the big challenges as a German fighter pilot, because we fly in one of the 23 airplanes that are operated in the Western Hemisphere of that type. So the big interest that we have by other NATO units and the type of flying that we actually are allowed to do by being so special make up the biggest fun part about flying that. We get to fly a lot of DACT in the MiG-29, so we gain a lot of experience while doing that. There's probably other airplanes that can perform better than ours in a few areas, but the big thing is that we get to see so much of air combat. I mean, simulated air combat. I've been flying the MiG-29 since September 1994. The big challenge was, of course, to fly a totally different airplane than I had been flying before. Plus, it was one that has never been known before from the inside a couple of years before that. And the other thing was the making up a new squadron with developing new tactics and so on and so forth. Seemed to be a big challenge to jump at, and that's what I was trying to do. There's an old instructor of mine that I had when I was training on the Phantoms. He said, once you are getting out of the airplane and did not think that you learn anything, you should quit flying, because then you start getting dangerous. If you stop trying to improve and stop learning, then you better quit.
Ja, okay, da kann ich mich raushalten.
Da war ich nicht sicher. Das Ding gibt's nicht mehr. Das ist
Okay, wunderbar.
Working at a East German base, on a daily business, you don't really think about it anymore. But the really interesting part in the last couple of years was having East German pilots and West German pilots joined in one squadron and finding out what the other guys did before actually the wall came down, finding out about philosophies, tactics, and so on and so forth.
Okay, dann weiß ich aber jetzt schon Bescheid. Mir ging es nur so um die Hotspots.
Cool.
Okay.
You ready?
The opportunity to see the MiG-29 up close, not too many pilots get the chance to fly with or against the MiG-29, especially in a training environment, so it's a great opportunity to go do that.
Lieutenant Brian Hess, call sign Hester. Just a few months ago, he was learning how to fly. Now, he's about to learn against a MiG.
There's only 2 students going over there. All the other pilots that are over there are well-seasoned fleet pilots, so we're very new to this. Only a few months of flying the F-18, as where everyone else has been in for 4 or 5 years. So there's a lot of people who are going to be watching us.
Go get him, Esther.
For Hester, the prospect of being watched closely by his instructors raises the stakes of how well he performs at Red October. He's already flown 1 mission at Laga. This is his second go.
Well, we went up there, we just had, it was my instructors and mine, first time against the MiG-29. So we went out there with a couple different game plans. We were just going to execute them both, and then on the third try, go with the one that worked better the first 2 times.
All right, we'll be ready to rock. Go ahead and read these books.
Today we are doing a 2v4. Myself and another Hornet are going out together to fly to 2. And we will be fighting 2 other sections. One, an aggressor F-18 pilot with a MiG-29, and the other group being 2 German F-4s.
You copy that? Roger that.
Here we go. This is what I wanted to do my whole life. I grew up next to Holloman Air Force Base, and ever since I can remember, I wanted to fly jets. So this is all I ever wanted to do. Never even thought about doing anything else. How you doing?
Dude, sir.
Great. Very few pilots in the Navy or in the Air Force or any American pilots get the opportunity to do this kind of thing. So me being brand new to this, it's a very unique experience for anyone, much less a student.
the opposing aircraft merge. They maneuver, strike. The challenge for Hester is to use his radar and target his opponent, all while keeping the jet airborne. Flying against a real MiG just makes it that much harder. The role of the German pilots in Red October is clear. Their job is to play the adversary and perform specific maneuvers. Maneuvers that are planned ahead of time and which the American instructors and their students expect to see. The purpose is to rehearse the students in the choreography of air combat. But for the German pilots, this takes some of the fun out of flying. Target practice gets old when you're always playing the target. That's why sometimes the Germans have been known to tear up the script in the middle of a training exercise and employ a surprise maneuver. The Americans don't appreciate this kind of improvisation. They want Red October to go by the book and make sure their students see the air combat training scenarios that the Navy requires. No one will admit to the surprise maneuvers, at least not on camera. But for the German pilots, clearly it's a matter of pride. They are among the best fighter pilots in the world, and they want the opportunity to prove it. If only for a few minutes, they want to show what they can do when the hunted becomes the hunter. November 1989, the Cold War is ending. The Berlin Wall comes down. After 48 years, the divided homeland of East and West Germany is reunited. In one swift stroke, enemies were forced to become allies as the geopolitical chessboard was swept clean. Financial support for the Soviet allies disappeared, and the world threat changed. The MiG-29 had been exported around the world as part of a larger Soviet military plan. Nations that had once been partners with the USSR, such as North Korea and Syria, possessed the same weapon, but lacked the global focus.
The technology that we faced in the 80s has now proliferated around the world. Both the Russians and the Chinese specifically have been good exporters of military capability to a lot of different countries.
Before, the superpowers would have suppressed the internal ethnic rivalries in countries like Yugoslavia. Now these hotspots threaten to ensnare the rest of the world. Most ominously, the threat was not necessarily military. Bombings, both at home and abroad, were the work of civilian and paramilitary organizations. At the dawn of the 21st century, the threat has evolved. Air superiority remains the cornerstone of American military strategy, and exercises like Red October are vital if Western pilots are to maintain dominance in the skies. The structured training is complemented by the casual interactions of the pilots. And if there's one pilot tradition that cuts across all cultural boundaries, it's meeting in the officers' club after a long day of flying. During Red October, the tradition is upheld. The German and American pilots convene after hours, swapping stories, getting to know each other. Were it not for their accents, it would be hard to tell them apart. It's as if the warrior culture among fighter pilots really speaks just one language. In fact, they have more in common than even they know.
I've been fishing since I can remember, growing up around the water and having a lot of friends that did it. That's all I remember doing in my spare time. The reason I wanted to move out here on the water was so that I could fish, and I can't complain, but the spare time isn't what it used to be. A lot of traveling.
I like to go fishing, being together with my family, riding my bicycle, doing some sport. Germany's biggest island is the island of Rügen, and some of my relatives live there. So I like to go there. And yeah, we have a small fishing boat there, so it's a lot of fun there.
In my job flying, I come back at evening, and I love the job, but I come back and I can't really look at something that I did. It's all in my mind, and it's all the experience and the training that I benefit from it, but there's really nothing that I see like a worker is building a house that he can look on or something. I don't have that.
Simon Folksman, known as V-Man, grew up in Cold War-era West Berlin. Now he flies the F-4.
I guess that's why a lot of pilots tend to have a hobby where they create something really they can look on. I know a lot of pilots that become a woodcrafter or something like that after the military time, just to do something.
You're gonna lock that.
Pilots on both sides are also on common ground about the future of their flying careers, though for very different reasons. In the U.S., more and more pilots have been leaving the armed forces, lured away by higher-paying jobs and better work conditions with commercial airlines. Convincing highly trained pilots like Mongo to stay in the Navy has become a top priority.
I've got about a year before I can make the decision whether I want to get out of the Navy or not, and I've always been a lifer. It's something, again, seeing my father do it, it's something that I've always wanted to do, and I love the opportunities I'm provided. I love flying the airplane. I particularly love the people that I work with. You just don't find a better group of people, so I can see staying in for a long time.
In Germany, however, pilot retention isn't the problem. Forced retirement is.
In Germany, if you are a normal squadron pilot, then you can fly jets till you are 41. And then, yeah, basically you will be kicked out of the Air Force. Actually, you are retired then with a small amount of pension. That's not enough to live and not enough to die, but I'm 37, so I have another 3 years basically, and then I'm done.
Yeah, since the Navy came here 2 years ago, we started with this thing, and now it became actually a real ritual. Every time like American guys or Dutch guys come over, we do this. So this is big fun, yeah, and all the other guys like it too.
A German tradition is a go-kart race against pilots from the visiting squadron. It's a chance for them to stage a dogfight all over again at close range.
Well, the fighting spirit is about the same. You want to win, and if you chase someone, and then you gotta, if he doesn't let you pass, you just kick him out. So that's probably the easiest thing.
And card number 7, okay?
We're in the middle of the pack now. We're pulling up. I think after a few more laps, we could be in there. The mechanics are different, but on the same respect, the competition is
Totally
exactly the same.
Yeah.
Exactly the same.
It's an aggressive spirit. That's what works out here.
What tactic works the best?
Getting behind a guy, bumping him, and spinning him out of control.
We definitely have trained the new guys. We've definitely trained some of the more senior guys who've come back and had the ability to fight against MiG-29s, which is pretty neat.
I think they're learning more than what they needed to learn. You know, usually we do this in Key West, and they get to see some vanilla situations, and out here we're getting to see some real-world threats, doing some real-world stuff. So they're getting more than they bargained for.
If you look at it on a personal side, a lot of us have gotten the 1v1s, and then, of course, today I got the MiG-29. So I definitely, I can't complain about my personal program. But I think overall it's been quite a success.
Even a simulated dogfight can bring the unexpected. This day, while pursuing a MiG vertically into the sky, an F-18 pilot finds himself in a potentially disastrous situation, euphemistically known as a departure from controlled flight.
All right, terminate ballistic. Copy ballistic, I go off to the east. I'm Watch your altitude, watch your altitude. I'm out of control. Shield 1 from Ramon. Shield flip, watch your altitude. Yes, I'm okay. I'm recovered. Altitude. Copy that. Shield 1 from Ramon. Kindly squawk 3643.
Watch it again. This time, the pilot's point of view, looking through the heads-up display.
All right, terminate ballistic.
Peaking at over 16,000 feet, the F-18's airspeed drops to less than 50 miles per hour. The jet begins falling like a leaf from a tree towards the Earth, except the Hornet falls 10,000 feet.
I'm departed here. Copy. Watch your altitude, watch your altitude. I'm out of control.
To survive the departure, the pilot must relinquish control of the aircraft to the flight computers.
Watch your altitude. Yes, I'm okay. I'm recovered. Altitude. Copy.
Only the pilot's training and the F-18's computer allow him to regain control, but only after crashing the hard deck, the simulated ground. Fortunately, the incident occurred at Red October. The pilot will live to fly another day. Should he ever face a MiG in real air combat, he will know the risk of attempting a similar vertical maneuver. The experience of losing today's exercise may help him win in the future. At Red October, the learning that takes place before and after a simulated dogfight can't be measured in wins and losses.
Yeah, they were. Okay, so that might go out the window too. If you need to do any type of stagger back, then we'll use these numbers right here.
All that really counts is the knowledge the pilots gained from what brought them to Germany in the first place, the siren call of the MiG-29.
Questions? No.
All right, that's a nice. You have 2 needles on one tack.
To help give the Americans an even better feel for what the MiG can do against them, a MiG flight simulator puts them at the controls.
Which is dangerous altitude. Yeah, we'll be here in a couple months.
Cool.
Okay.
All right, thanks.
Skipper Nosal volunteers to give it a try, unaware of the surprise his pilots have in mind.
The skipper's in there, so what we're doing is we gave him icy conditions, and we gave him 35 knots of crosswind. Look at him blow.
Hey, my Joe's, did this one?
Yeah.
Hey, put it 50 knots.
Hurry. How hard is this landing going to be for him?
He might have
almost impossible.
When he lands, it's going to be icy.
He's going to go off the...
We got ice set, too.
Keep it coming. You look good.
These are your guys, yo.
Keep it coming.
Keep it coming.
Keep it coming, Skipper. Keep it coming.
Look at the ice.
Look at the ice.
Okay, I'm done. Thank you.
Nice job.
Tell him to save the seat.
Okay, 3 wire.
Not your business. It's a business of the guys. All right, thanks.
I think I died there. It was all good except for the landing. It's fun. It's neat. It's a lot of work. A lot of work. Hard airplane to fly. It's gonna be pretty good to fly this airplane. It's not harder than the Hornet, that's for sure. Now that's a neat takeoff.
The MiG-29 Fulcrum. For 2 weeks in the skies over northern Germany, these American pilots have faced a former enemy. The threat has changed, but the challenge of dogfighting has not.
The fighter pilot instinct is the same instinct across the world. It's that I want to win and I'm gonna win type attitude is what makes a good fighter pilot. It doesn't matter whether you're an American, a Russian, an Australian, it's the same thing.
While you're in the engagement, you know, it's all or nothing. But once you get on deck, it's a typical fighter pilot thing. Type A personality, really very aggressive, very competitive, but can really let down your hair if you got any, and have fun.
For Caesar, Red October has meant more than just seeing a MiG. During the exercise, he got his wish, a one-on-one with the big bad wolf.
Here he is, he's translating up on the horizon here. We're at 18,000 feet to be in this position, and he's pulling up to the horizon, so we're pretty much closing. And I'm at 1,000 feet, and this right here is what makes it all worth it. You know, leaving home for a couple of weeks, you know, newborn and everything. Not saying, honey, that you know, I want to leave home, but to be able to come back from the deck and have a pipper right on the cockpit with the trigger down, and this guy pretty much blowing up right in front of you makes it worth it. I could go home now.
1, 2, 3.
Let's do it again. Here we go.
All right.
You know, it's almost like the mythical beast out there because you've heard so much about it, studied it, I know everything about it. Now all of a sudden I'm looking at it.
In all our training cycles, aviation included, we put an emphasis on what the capability is that a pilot is expected to counter. I think probably competition within our own forces is the key to keeping people sharp and up to speed. Everybody's out trying to outdo the other one, especially a good fighter pilot. He wants to be better than any other fighter pilot in the world, so he's going to go and do his very, very best, and if it looks like he's not up to snuff in countering a certain threat, he's going to learn how to do it better. He's going to keep studying.
We did what we set out to do. We validated our tactics, and I'm comfortable knowing that if I launch off the ship in this jet, I can take it up against the best the enemy's got to throw at us.
Well, the greatest thing really was just the opportunity to be able to go to another country, to go to Germany, see the MiG-29, fight the MiG-29. I learned a lot. Toward the end, I started doing better. So.
Thank you very much for the great training.
It's the simulation of the actual adversary is paramount, and it's great. You're reading our briefing guides here for the students. Category 4 adversary, MiG. It says can be simulated by an F-18, F-14, F-16. And it doesn't say it can be simulated by a MiG-29, well, because it's not simulating. So we're looking at our briefing guides, we're briefing these students, we're like, well, you actually got the real thing today, so it's pretty cool. Right now, they're students, and they're worried about their performance, and they're worried about what's going to happen next. They're flying in a strange area, they're not comfortable, but they don't realize that they're going to go to a fleet squadron, and you're going to have some guy up there saying, well, this is what you want to do against the MiG. And if he's a smart kid, he'll keep his mouth shut, but he'll go, no, this is what you want to do against the MiG, because I've already done it.
People today have to be prepared to face a threat of similar technology, perhaps of lesser magnitude in terms of total numbers than they would have at that time, but the threat is still there. And if we're going to protect U.S. interests and those of our friends and allies around the world, we have to be able to counter it.
We're home. We got all 10 airplanes home. We got all of our people home, all of our cargo. It was great. It was a chance to fight MiG-29s, and everybody did, and I think everybody did an outstanding job. We had a couple guys that it was their first fighter weapons hops ever, and it was against a MiG-29 or an F-4, and they did fantastic. And it just proves that our training's very good. We fly a great airplane, the F-18 Hornet. We train our pilots very well, and we're able to accomplish something like this. Welcome home, everybody. Thanks very much.
You have a good flight?
Had a great flight. Thank you. A little long, but thanks. Nice job.
squadrons return home from Red October to the country and families they have sworn to defend. Because of this type of training, American pilots control the skies of battle. But the threat has changed. No longer is it just a single enemy with a massive military. Out of the ashes of the Cold War, now rogue states and terrorist groups also endanger the people of the world. Maintaining air superiority while responding to this new threat is the challenge for the future.
Next, hindsight is 20/20. Look at the events that shaped the 20th century with a new perspective. From inside the Oval Office, from Watergate to the Gulf War, get a dose of presidential insight with Rewind. Next, on the Discovery Civilization channel.